Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the ILEA Webinar 3. Today, our presenters, of course, you've met them already, are Amy Dulcimer and Sudi Whalen. And our hosts and moderators today are myself, Olga Escamilla, Beth Ponder, Robin Booth, and possibly Marian Thatcher if she joins us, if she hasn't already. And at this time, we will turn it over to our presenters, Amy and Sudi.
Good afternoon. Yeah, it's afternoon. Sorry, I'm losing what time of day it is. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. As Deborah said, it's so great to see you all here. You all made it. Woohoo! Happy to see all of you. This is webinar 3 for our Instructional Leadership Excellence Academy. You're going to be seeing myself and Amy, but before we dive in, we're both going to be going through some different content with you today. But before we dive in, I do want to invite my colleague Amy to join me in saying a quick hello on screen and being able to say hi to all of you. We're really here, we're really real, but we don't want to kill the bandwidth, so we're not going to keep our webcams on the whole time as much as we would love to. So I just wanted to say hi to everyone. You've all met me, so we're going to go ahead and deep dive into our content, but not before doing a quick little check-in. So looking at the screen, we have 4 graphics here. We've all been feeling different ways in the past few weeks. Like I just said, I'm losing track of what day it is. So I want you to take a look at these 4 memes and tell me which one of the 4 you relate to or all of them. And in case you're confused by item C there, that is our office potato. What happened here was a person was giving a meeting. She was leading a meeting with her subordinates, and she accidentally turned herself into a potato in the Microsoft Teams platform, could not figure out how to disable the feature, and then had to conduct the entire meeting as a potato. And I really love the expression on her face as if she's just kind of resigned to the situation. So if Olga could please bring up the poll, I would like for you to go ahead and vote on which memes you relate to. And if the poll is blocking it, you can click the top and drag it to move it out of your way. So which meme are you relating to today? Are you the person with the 4-legged or 2-legged friends interrupting you on your video calls? Are you tech support, or are you constantly calling tech support and hearing this line or giving it to other people? Are you the office potato? Have you forgotten what day it is, or all of the above? We have about 31 more seconds. Looks like most of you have voted. Looks like only one hasn't. All right, is that everyone? I can't see my attendee pod, so I'm not sure.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go ahead and end polling. So it looks like the majority of us, we have a tie between all of the above. We're feeling all of this. And also B, have you tried to turn it off and turn it back on again? Alrighty, well, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm gonna go ahead and close that window out for us. And then we're gonna do one more activity. Now I want to know how you're doing. I want you to look at the phrases and the words on the screen here in the 4 quadrants, red, yellow, green, and blue. And I want you to identify what word matches your mood right now. Which word matches your mood right now? Once you've picked your word, I want you to click on the poll that Olga just popped up for us. Thank you, Olga. And select which color aligned with your mood. How are you today? I see 2 have voted. And you're going to do that on the poll. Thank you. I think we're waiting on, and that looks like everybody, right? Yeah, you can only pick one, so pick which one you most closely resonate with. Alrighty, so it looks like everyone has voted. So it looks like the majority of us are feeling kind of green and a little red. We're tied between green and red, which is totally okay. And there's no right or wrong answer. How you feel is how you feel. And so as we look at our group right now, we have an even spread between green and red, and then one person in yellow, one person in blue, which means some of us are feeling a little not so great today, and then some of us are just kind of going with the flow. I appreciate your honesty in telling us how you're feeling today. And just remember, we're going to fluctuate in how we feel. One minute we're feeling optimistic. We finally figured out what day it is. And the next minute we're like, is it really only Wednesday? So it's totally okay. But thank you for sharing. Alrighty, so in our chat pod, now I'm going to ask another check-in question. I want you to tell me what is helping you during these uncertain and difficult times. What has been bringing you some form of relief? For me, it is memes that Amy sends us on almost a daily basis. Sometimes they're really hilariously funny. Sometimes it's kind of dark humor. Sometimes it's just really real. When I was in a funk last week, she sent me a little graph that basically showed me that every feeling I was feeling was normal, and that helped me a lot. So in the chat pod, I want you to type in there in the Zoom group chat section, what is helping you during these difficult and uncertain times? What is making you feel a little bit better? Humor. Talking to students and coworkers. Yes, staying connected. That's helpful. Walking. Great. Picking walks in between Zoom meetings. That's how you avoid becoming a Zoombie. Take walks between meetings. Walking, humor. Memes and jokes come in our Google chats and hangouts. Awesome. Talking with friends and walks. Talking on the phone to my sister. Going outside. Amy said her dogs. Deb also said her dogs. Wonderful, wonderful. So we're all finding ways to cope, whether that's with our, oh, my son said hello to my students every class. That's great. Gray tea, Pedro said. Yes. So yeah, we're all finding little ways to kind of cope right now. What makes us feel better? For some of us, it's exercise, walking, spending time with our pets, talking with our friends and coworkers. I'm surprised, I see tea made it. I'm surprised food didn't make the list this time. Food made the list earlier. Maybe it's just me. Snacks make me feel better, but that's probably not a good thing. But maybe I should take up walking. Oh, I missed Robin's going outside, watching Broadway shows on the weekend and puzzles. Yes. Sweets make Jennifer feel better too. Thank you. I have someone who's feeling the same way I am. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and dive in. So our timeline where we are today is we are on our webinar 3. So despite everything that's going on, we are still on track. We will be continuing with our plan to move forward. Today, and we'll talk more about what's coming up later on in the day in terms of our next webinar and things of that, virtual event and things of that nature. So for today, yes, emotional eating, that's true. So for today, we're going to talk about looking at our post-COVID-19 challenges and getting peer support and advice, like what is going on with everyone? How are you feeling? How are you doing? And we did read your challenges, so we're glad you shared. So we'll have time to discuss that amongst ourselves and with each other. We're going to learn some tips for leading from a distance, actually for teaching from a distance, and then we're going to start to conceptualize your project, your research, not action research, gosh, I keep wanting to say that, but your professional improvement project, the project that you are thinking about, what topics you want to do and things like that. We're going to have some breakout groups. We're going to share what your ideas are, get some feedback from your peers about how is your idea measurable, what kind of things you can do with it, and maybe some guidance too along the way. And then we'll have wrap up and next steps. Okay. There we go. So I'm going to pass this over to Amy. Amy, do you want to share your screen or do you want me to just progress for you?
It's fine for you to do it, Sudie, thanks.
Okay.
So we can't get together in person today, sadly, but we can have what I call the virtual huddle, where we kind of bring our minds together to present the challenges we're facing in this post-COVID world and help brainstorm solutions and offer support to each other. So I'm thinking that first I want to really thank you guys for submitting your challenge stories in the portal. Sudie and I were very moved reading your stories and hearing about, how the virus has disrupted and rearranged all of our lives, really with breathtaking speed, and has really changed everything about the way we work with our colleagues and with our students. And this all happened in a very short time span and with really little warning, and in many cases without any preparation. We've been kind of thrust into leading our students, leading our staff teams in some cases from a distance, and providing services virtually. And for many of us, it means kind of leading and teaching remotely and using new technologies that we may not even feel comfortable with ourselves, let alone having to help our students and our coworkers manage those technologies. So I first want to just say that we won't have time today to share all your stories. We have time for 2, but that you express similar concerns and themes in your stories. And so, Sudi, do you want to go ahead to the next slide? So some of those themes that you guys expressed are about, how do you develop yourself or your coworkers in terms of supporting and training and leading in these new remote learning times? How do you engage students and teach students online and serve them, including possibly recruiting them and orienting them? You had a lot of questions around your technical challenges and, just in terms of, how do I help students use this new technology or, even access it? How do we help staff with their tech issues? And then really another theme that emerges is taking care of ourselves and doing self-care. How do I, with this flood of information and this drinking from the fire hose of all these new requirements in this new learning mode that we're in, how do I take care of myself and balance the demands of working from home, oftentimes with our families underfoot, and how do I kind of stay sane and be good to myself too? So with that said, Sudi, you can advance. We're going to have 2 presenters today. I want to thank Amy Finley, who's an instructional specialist from, I think that's Dallas. I'm going to get the DCCD wrong. And Angela Payne, another instructional specialist, also from the same adult ed program, sharing their challenge stories. You can go ahead, Sudi. So just in terms of presenting, the format is I'll invite Amy to share first and then Angela, and in each instance I'll first read the story and you guys can read along so we understand what our presenters are saying is going on with them and their questions they have that they need help with from us. Then you guys will have an opportunity, the listeners, to ask any additional, well, then the presenters will provide additional context briefly, just 1 or 2 minutes on what's going on. Then we'll have a chance to ask additional questions to clarify and understand their context a little bit more if we need a little bit more information. And then I'm going to invite you to offer some new ideas and feedback for the presenter. As I said, a lot of us are grappling with the same things, and I think many of you have tried some solutions and are working in the same environments and have good ideas to share. So with that, we can go ahead, Sudi. I'm going to invite Amy to unmic herself. Amy, are you there?
I am. Hello.
Hi, welcome, Amy. I'm going to read your
Thanks.
story first, okay, Amy?
Okay, sure.
So Amy wrote, we're trying to manage a one college integration and remote instruction challenges at the same time. Many students have not been required or encouraged to use district resources. The transition to rapid remote learning has exposed a glaring needs gap in technology training for instructors. Tech skills that were previously considered optional by some have now become standard practice. And Amy's questions for our group are, how can we embrace and encourage this mindset shift among instructors? And how can we adjust our PD offerings so that instructors can also get digital literacy upskilling without overwhelming them? So Amy, thanks for sharing. I think your questions and your story resonate with a lot of us. Can you give us a little bit, just a minute or 2 of additional context for your story and your questions?
Yes, absolutely. So when I'm talking about our one college integration, it was decided at the end of last year. Dallas, as you know, is comprised or has been comprised of 7 individually accredited colleges. And now we're moving to one college system, which is wonderful. But what that means for us is now, whereas we were spiderwebbed out across the Metroplex, now we're trying to wrangle in all of the colleges and all of the full-time instructors and adjunct instructors that go along with that. So now people are having to kind of report to the district office, which is where I am, and Angela and Kenneth, and they never have before. So we've been trying to get them, you know, over time, we've been offering lots of PD on digital literacy components, how to integrate digital literacy into your class, whatever classroom it is. But these instructors have never really had to be accountable to our college, one college type system before. So I think people are kind of shutting down and hoping to just ride it out until this is over and they feel like they can kind of go back to the way that things were. And I don't think that that's a realistic mindset to have. So I just want to know, how can I kind of help them weather the storm and at the same time quickly get caught up with some of the requirements, the tech requirements that we have.
Right. Okay. So thank you for that. First, I want to ask our listeners if they have any additional questions for you about your context that they need to understand before we start to try to address your questions. So for our ILEA participants, is there anything about Amy's context that you need to know more about or want to know more about before we start to give some advice? I'll give everybody 1 minute, okay, Amy?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add again that I'm talking about in the context of the instructors. So the student, another issue, and I know Angela's going to talk about that, but I'm talking about our colleagues.
Sure. Yep. Which is huge.
Yeah.
And I think we can all relate to that. So I don't see any questions right now, but if you have them, certainly post them. So I'm going to ask the group, the two questions that Amy's putting forward to us are, you know, how can she help instructors embrace and encourage the mindset shift that has to happen to moving instruction online and learning how to do it and being part of this one college integration? And also, how can Amy and her colleagues adjust their PD so that they can help the instructors get up to speed without, you know, overwhelming them and feeling like, you know, that it's going to shut them down? So why don't you guys go ahead, and any advice you have or things you've tried in your program or that you've been a part of that you might recommend to Amy now? You can post them in the chat, or if you have something really long to say, if you raise your hand and we have time, I think Sudhi could probably turn your mic
on. I can't actually see that window since I'm sharing my screen.
Oh, all right. Olga maybe can help us with that.
I can.
Okay, thank you. So I see Romney says, I've been doing a lot of trial and error. Yes, Romney, I think we all have. Maybe you can elaborate on a few things maybe that you've tried that have worked, or maybe a really powerful don't do this again lesson. That would be great. Exactly what Amy's saying, what has worked. Amy, I think, you know, one thing while people are thinking about it that a couple of pieces of advice, which is, and we're going to cover some of this later, which is, I think this idea of not overwhelming folks with PD offerings makes good sense. And so maybe some smaller trainings, like Sudhi likes to call them nuggets, you know, give people like little nuggets instead of the whole shebang, because they can only incorporate so much at a time. Ryan says, I've been hosting practice Zoom sessions with my instructors, allowing them to take over my screen, share their screen, and practice using different features before actually hosting class. Great, Ryan. So letting them kind of practice in the technology with support before they have to go out on their own. Pedro says schedule PDs at more convenient times, preferably at the end of the day, trying not to interrupt their online instruction. Great idea, Pedro. So figuring out like when they can hear it, when it's not going to be that they're juggling too many things or too distracted because they're trying to respond to students. Lots of patience. I see here North Star has a great digital literacy program, which is self-paced, although I see the buddy system working really well when it comes to technology integration. Yes, Lori, thank you. So one idea that we've seen in the field that Lori's talking about is trying to pair people up with peers. So, you know, some of us are better at this than others, and trying to create a buddy system so that if I'm less competent and secure with my technology skills, I have somebody that's like my wing person to help me develop, because it is hard if you're just the one person that's trying to teach, you know, dozens of teachers. But if you can have a buddy system and build on sort of the natural skills of other people. Angela says the team in Dallas does have a lot of PD sessions throughout the years. Instructors have to realize technology will advance their instruction. So this idea, Angela, that you have to get the buy-in from them, and I think that's one of the questions, right? Which is, how do you get them to shift their mindset or embrace it? Jennifer says, what's worked in my case, smaller teaching pool of about 8 people, it looks like, is doing short trainings on the platforms in the afternoon, then doing one-on-one Zoom meetings and technical difficulties and walking through it, right? Great, Jennifer. So that idea that you can give a PD, but then you kind of have to follow up, especially if people are struggling, and give them that one-on-one support. There's a lot of good advice here. I mean, you know, Amy's reading along. Try to provide tech support more individually, Pedro says again, and what the one-on-one Zoom meetings. So there was some great advice here. Thank you, guys. Amy, I hope this was helpful for you. I know I don't see a lot about kind of encouraging the mindset shift, so I'm wondering if there's one other person maybe who has some advice about that. How do you, we kind of have to shift right now. The pandemic is forcing us all to do that. But if folks are resistant and scared, that's going to be harder to do. So how do you kind of break down that resistance or make people feel less afraid of the technology? Thanks, Amy. I hope that was helpful. Lori says, tell them it benefits their students as a way to get buy-in. I would say also, Amy, you know, I think being a model and letting people just say how they feel and kind of bursting the, like popping the bubble on the anxiety can help. So just kind of starting out by naming it and saying, you know, this is new for all of us and it's challenging, we're learning things, and it's something that's being forced on us, but as Lori said, it does benefit the students, and also that by kind of shifting our approach to it, we may in fact grow from it and enjoy it, but that we first have to just know that we have to do it. Right. So Jennifer says, I try to reinforce that I'm learning with them and that it's okay to get it wrong at first. Right. Thanks, Jennifer. Awesome. So thank you so much, Amy. We're going to need to move on to Angela now, but I hope that was helpful for you. And then there's some advice coming in still for you, Amy. So Angela, let's Sudi move ahead, and Angela, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and unmic yourself. Are you there, Angela?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you, Angela. And thanks for sharing your story. I'm going to read it first to everybody, and then we'll ask you to offer more context. So Angela says, one of my biggest challenges since switching to online learning is convincing my students to learn online. My students have become accustomed to learning in a classroom setting. Most of my HSE students have children and they are busy making sure their children are learning. Some students have left the program and decided to wait in pursuing their HSE certificate until they can go back to the classroom. The students and the children both are dealing with the same challenge of learning online at the same time, and this has been very challenging for both parent and child. And your question is, what can instructors do to encourage students to complete their HSE in an online setting? So Angela, do you want to elaborate or give us any more context for your story and your challenge?
Sure, sure. Yes. When we decided that we were going to go online, they gave us a week in Dallas. They gave us about a week to prepare ourselves as well as our students. So what I was doing, I was spending that time calling students and telling them about the switch, what we were getting ready to do online. And you know, a lot of them did not agree. They were trying to figure out life because the schools were doing the same thing. There were no schools. They were having to deal with homeschooling. Parents had never homeschooled their children before. Now they were trying to figure out, how do I homeschool? There was communication breakdown between their children's schools and themselves as to how they were going to get lessons. Some of the teachers were copying lessons, mailing it to the parents. Some of the schools were telling the parents, well, you have to have a computer. We're going to send the assignments through a computer. Well, some of the students that I served, some of the parents that I served did not have technology, didn't have internet, didn't have a computer. Also, some of my students have children under 5 years old. So they were able to come to a 3-hour class and have a babysitter. Now there's no babysitter. Now all of the children are at home. Also with the shelter in place, that was another, you can't get a babysitter and you have shelter in place, and telling everyone to stay home, it's hard to get a babysitter. They had to rearrange schedules. Now you have the kids at home. Now you've got to totally rearrange your schedule. They talked about time managing their time. And also they talked about the fears. Like, I've never learned online. How do I do that? And I told them I would help walk them through how to use eCampus, but some of them had the fear. And also I talked to a couple of my students, there was some job losses. Husband wasn't working, husband lost their job. So they were dealing with a lot. They were dealing with a lot, just trying to keep up, catch up, all of these things. I was just hearing many different stories. And a couple of the parents just told me, Angela, you know what, when you guys go back to the classroom, I'll be back. Right now, I'm just trying to manage my family. I'm just trying to manage life.
Yeah, Angela, I really appreciate everything that you're saying. And I think everybody who's listening is that it's really just kind of survival for a lot of the students in this new reality. That, like you said, they're trying to manage the kids at home and the kids learning, their own the tech barriers, whether they have the technology or know how to use it, the fear just of all this, fear in general, fear of the virus, fear that things are out of control, right? The emotional toll of the pandemic on all of us and our emotional lives. And then just all the barriers that you talk about, you know, maybe they don't have a computer at home or internet, or a lot of our students, I think, are trying to use these platforms on their phones, which, you know, is not, you know, easy often or conducive for learning. So you've mentioned a lot of things that I think are real barriers and challenges to keeping students learning in an online setting. So thank you for that, Angela. Before we go ahead, I just want to ask the group, are there any other questions that you have about Angela's context? I think probably a lot of us are feeling like we can really relate to what Angela shared, but if you have any other questions about kind of what they're dealing with. So Ryan says, are you using a distance learning platform like GED Academy? What platform are you guys using, Angela?
Well, we're using Blackboard. Okay. But inside of Blackboard, we can put GED Academy for the students to work on. And for those that left the class, I told them, encourage them to continue using GED Academy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So go ahead, guys, and post any other questions you have for Angela. Sorry, you can hear my dogs in the background. Can you guys also start thinking and posting your responses to Angela's question about what can instructors do? How can they encourage students to learn online and maybe reduce some of the barriers that Angela had talked about? So how do you encourage students to stay online, and how do you deal with those very real realities for our students? So Lori says, let them know that it's
that this is the time they can best model for their children how important education is by their own participation despite the challenges. So great point, Lori, that you know, by them sitting down and learning in front of the computer and showing their kids how important it is, they're modeling. And a lot of our students are returning to school because of their families, and they want better opportunities for their children. So that's a great point. Desiree says flexible time to study. Maybe if they're overwhelmed, they can start out slowly and just do a few weeks and build up. Many organizations are opening up hotspots for those without internet access. So maybe encouraging them to interact with others. So this idea that if they do have internet barriers or tech barriers, maybe you can connect them to resources that allow them to access them. Someone earlier said they're doing phone tutoring because their students don't have internet, and I thought that was really interesting. Sudi, my list is kind of running fast, so if you see some, jump in.
Yeah, looks like T called Beth, that's Beth, said she saw one ISD that has put school buses around town as hotspots. Ryan says, for our students who have very loud home environments, who can't really participate in live online classes, I've encouraged them to connect with their instructor for at least 30 minutes a week and continue working on the distance learning platform. But in the meantime, to begin working on establishing a better home study environment. And then Pedro, remote synchronized learning might not be possible for parents with children at home. So maybe, did we just read that one? Better option for them now is to have students use one of the DL state approved lists, and instructors might follow up with phone calls and encourage students and clear time.
Yep. And Robin says, you know, let them grieve for what's happened, right? Encourage them to take it slow. So honor their feelings, like acknowledge that this is hard and it is a different universe, and that, you know, just kind of, I think, acknowledging people's feelings and encouraging them and kind of giving them permission to feel all that is, you know, important. Jennifer says, we've tried to shift class times where we can if kids being at home changes the time available. So that's a great idea, right? Which is if you're parents and you're trying to help your kids learn all day and they're actually on your home computer, potentially maybe shifting it if you have classes going on that are not asynchronous. And Ryan says they're using planned gaps for students where necessary. So Angela, do you have any questions or additional thoughts from this feedback?
No, I do not. Great suggestions. Great suggestions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Angela and Amy, for sharing. We really, really appreciate, and I think we all feel, you know, I think we're all feeling similarly and we're in the same boat. So thank you guys. And Jose, I think, just posted a little bit more. So Angela, there may be some more feedback coming in for you if you want to keep checking out the chat. I'm going to go ahead and pass this back to Sudi, and I really want to just thank you guys for sharing and for supporting Angela and Amy.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Angela and Amy, for being willing to share, and the group for being supportive. And if you want to continue the conversation online, please do so in the portal. If you haven't already done so, read through the challenge stories everyone is having. A lot of you are experiencing somewhat similar issues. So just reaching out and supporting each other, providing feedback, or just a simple, I get it, I'm in the same boat you are, can really help us with that sense of community. All right, so let's dive into tips for teaching from a distance. Some of these things are going to seem completely obvious to you because you're already doing them, but we're going to go through them anyway. So let's start with our first poll. When did you start teaching online? If you can bring that up, Olga. So we have two questions here. When did you start teaching online, and how were your classes offered? Please respond to both. Our options are, I'm not yet, but I'm preparing myself. I started teaching online when COVID-19 forced my hand, less than a year or over a year. And then how are you offering classes? Are you doing it asynchronously like we are right now? I'm sorry, where they're just doing stuff independently, independent study, self-directed, or synchronously like we are right now, meeting via Zoom or however else, or doing a combination of both. Please go ahead and vote on both questions. When did you start teaching online, and how are your classes offered? And the poll. Thank you. So we have about 6 responses. I'm not sure if we're still at the same number of people. I think so. It looks like we're still waiting on one more. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end our polling here, and let's take a look at our results. So 63% said when COVID-19 forced my hand. Yeah, I understand. 13% said we're not quite there yet, but you're preparing yourself. That's great. And another person was a year plus, or 2 people, I'm sorry, were 1 year plus. And then, so how are your classes offered? 2 of you are doing them synchronously like we are right now, and the rest of you are doing a combination of both. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to go ahead and close this out for us, and we're going to move forward. So here's my next question for you. In the chat pod, I want you to tell me what platforms, applications, and software you're using. And if you're joining by phone and you want to just unmute and say it instead, and you can't type in the chat pod, please go ahead and do so. Please let me know what tools you're using. But please share with us what platforms, applications, and software are you using?
For teaching, right, Sudi?
Yes, for teaching, not necessarily just for teaching. It could be for teaching or for meeting and things like that.
Okay.
You might be using, say, Moodle for your classroom, but using Zoom for your class meetings. Robin is using Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and WebEx. Amy's using Blackboard, Collaborate Ultra, GED Academy, and Burlington English. Nice combination there. Pedro, WhatsApp, Remind, Zoom, and Burlington English. Great. Jose is using Google Meet, Zoom, and Remind to communicate. Wonderful. Romney, Work Ready, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, GED Academy, Blackboard Collaborative. Ryan, she's using GED Academy, Burlington English, Zoom developing courses using Google Classroom, USA Lawrence, and GroupMe. Lots of different platforms going on there. Wonderful. Angela said eCampus, Blackboard, GED Academy, and Microsoft Teams. Jennifer said for distance learning, Aztec and Burlington English, then also Google Classroom for resources, WhatsApp for quick communications. Wonderful. Okay, so let's go on to our second part of this. What is the best tech tool? The number one, if you had to pick just one that was your favorite, what is the best tech tool you have used so far that has been the most helpful? Jennifer said in Zoom, of course. Yes, we're all turning into Zoomies. Ryan said Zoom. Jose said Zoom. Anyone else want to share the best tech tool you've used so far? I know we have a couple of techies in this group, so I'm really interested to hear what all of you are doing. Pedro said WhatsApp and Zoom, that communication and that face-to-face time, right? Virtual face-to-face. Angela said Blackboard. She really likes Blackboard. Wonderful, Angela. It's pretty easy to use, too. It's very intuitive. Jennifer said the combo of WhatsApp and Zoom is working out for us. Great. Romney said Blackboard. Jose said now switching into Blackboard Calibrate. Okay. Amy said Blackboard Collaborate. Yes. All right. So we're using a lot of similar tools, and we're seeing that we're having positive results with some similar tools too. So that's wonderful. Great. And so if there's anything on here that you saw that you're not sure what it is or how to use it, keep in mind who said that, so you know who to reach out to in the portal to say, hey, how's this working for you? And what are your tips and tricks? So let's talk about some common barriers to online persistence. One of which is if you have an auditory learning style, because we have a tendency to make things online very visual. And if you need to hear it, that can be a little hard for you to process. A lack of digital literacy, that's kind of, we touched on that that a little bit. Difficulty in accessing the resources. Sometimes the resources are available, but they're just too hard to find, or they're buried in the content. Being isolated or having a decreased engagement. That's why it's important to have a sense of community in your online courses. Lack of computer access. So if they don't have a computer, how else can they access our online content? And is it accessible to them from their phones and tablets? Personal life barriers, like kids are at home right now, or like they don't have private space to talk and chat with you in the Zoom meeting because there's no place quiet, or maybe they're just having a hard time and they're grieving and they're struggling just with everything going on. And then poor communication, if they're not hearing from you or if they're not sure how to communicate with you. And it looks like you guys are using some really innovative tools and some cool ways to keep that communication going. But these are things that are very common to cause people to no longer participate in online learning. So I want, if you could bring up the next poll, Olga, I want you to tell me which of these barriers have you already experienced with your students? And Olga, did you set that up for more than one? Allow more than one
Yes,
response?
it's multiple
Thank you.
choices. You could choose several.
So pick all of the ones that you have experienced with your students. You don't have to pick only one. So if you've seen all of these, then check all of them. And if you've seen a few here or there, and if you've seen one that's not on this list, pop into the chat and tell us what other barrier you've seen. If you see one that doesn't fall into one of these categories. So it looks like we're still, I think we're done, it looks like. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and, okay, Pedro said most students only have a cell phone. We think we set it up that way for multiple, oh, it looks like you did, Beth. Thank you. So it looks like number one is lack of computer access. 8 out of 8 said lack of computer access. Whereas a lot of you said lack of digital literacy. You guys hit on every single one of these. Only one person has run into the auditory learning style. Amy said another is English language learners missing other language technical support. Yes, and that is a problem with a lot of these platforms. They're really great, but some of them do not include offering the service in a different language so that the person can navigate it in their native language as they're trying to learn English. So yeah, that is definitely something to point out. Thank you. Who said that? Amy. Jennifer said she agrees with Pedro. The difference is some programs in computer versus phone cause problems. Yes, that's very true. That is very true. So we're going to talk more about these, how to get over these things. Yes, Amy. Ryan said that's a big issue for them too. So let's talk about the 5 key factors to success in online learning. Satisfaction with your online learning environment. That includes how it looks, how it feels, how you interact with it, all that great stuff. A sense of belonging to a learning community that's being included with your class, with the people who are your peers. They could become friends. They sometimes feel like family, right? Your classmates, and then also your teachers and your staff. Having that sense of belonging, feeling supported. I've taken a lot of online courses over the years, and I tell you that courses that I did not enjoy were the ones where I felt like I was in the class all by myself. It took me a long time to get feedback or get a question answered, and I just felt like I was kind of floating in space and no one was really there to support or help me, like I was on my own. And we don't want our students to feel that way. Lack of time management skills really hinders persistence, but when they have those skills, they do really well. So sometimes it's as simple as putting a module in your online course that includes starting up front, how do I manage my time effectively during this COVID-19 crisis? Quality of interactions and feedback. We want to make sure that the feedback we're giving is not just really generic. Like if it's something they're turning in and you just want to acknowledge that you received it, that's great. But when you're responding to what they did, you want to be thoughtful and respond to what they're saying and making sure we're being positive and lifting them up and encouraging them right now because, you know, times are hard. So we don't have a ton of time to deep dive into these, but I want to just give you a cursory overview of some tools that I'm going to be posting into the portal. The links are actually in this presentation, which will be posted, and so you'll be able to click on those. So one of them is the indicators of engaged learning online. It has 9 different segments that are grouped into 3 different categories: instructional approach, teaching, and learning. That learning piece leads more into what the students get out of it, and then teaching is what you do, and the instructional approach is that planning and technology piece. That's where you want to make sure that whatever thing you're using, that it's adaptable to a cell phone, for example. So the way it looks on your computer screen also looks the same on their phone. And so you want to make sure you're taking time to look at those things, that you're thinking about the vision of what you want them to learn and be engaged with, and how you're going to deliver that. Because sometimes we have this vision of what we think they need to learn, but then when we go and put it in an online course, it sort of gets watered down because we don't put as much energy into the engagement as we do to the content. And so you want to make sure the engagement is also there, because if students aren't engaged, they don't participate, right? And then the other 2 tools I have for you go along with this, but they're actual checklist for faculty and then also for teachers to see how the engagement is going. So, and these are all accessible online. So things like, did your students participate in online discussions? If you're noticing that they didn't, then we need to go back and look at why didn't they participate? How come they weren't responding to my questions? Maybe it's the way my questions were worded. Maybe I'm asking too many questions back to back and I'm not giving them a chance to really think about what they're doing. Maybe I'm putting too many discussions and not enough interactivity in between time, because sometimes discussion questions can feel a little like, what's the word, monotonous. Like I've answered one, I answer another, and now there's nothing else for me to do. That does become very boring over time. So think about, why aren't they interacting? How are we doing these things? And then also during the class, how did students interact with each other? How did they feel about each other? What norms did we have established for our students so that they know how to behave in our online environment when we do have these meetings, right? And then there's a separate checklist that's for students, and you can use this to survey your students to find out if they find it engaging. Pedro said, I had to buy a new cell phone to see the same screen that students were looking at. I had an old phone, 4 years old. Yes, but that is a great thing to do, because if you look at it on your phone, that's how you know if they really got it, right? If it's looking the way you want it to look. Great observation, Pedro. Thank you for sharing. So then back to the checklist, we also have the student checklist. So if you want to survey your students and see how engaging your courses are, you can do that. And again, these links will be shared with you today. So the one piece I do want to drive in on and that engagement piece is the technology aspect, right? You want to make sure that there's that interconnectivity, that whatever you use allows for interaction and communication in more than one way. Can I voice record? Can I video record? Can I type it in chat? So that students who are better at communicating in different mechanisms and different methods can do that. Sometimes we have situations that come up like the students are allowed to upload a video file, for example, but the maximum file size for that class site is only 1 megabyte, which is way smaller than what you can upload to a video, right? So you want to make sure that even if you're giving them the opportunity and to do these things, that your technology also supports it. Make sure they have access to challenging tasks, things that actually make their mind work, that they can actually think through. I know a lot of people think gamification of education only applies to K-12. It doesn't. Adults like to play games too. Just make sure they're geared towards things that they're interested in learning that apply to their context in life. Sometimes it's as simple as doing online interactive demonstrations and things for them to manipulate and play with, whether it's using a virtual computer for a Microsoft Office class, for example, and have them, or coding and programming type of thing, and letting them manipulate and engage with things online. So just think about making sure it's challenging, making sure it's engaging, and that stimulates thought and inquiry. It enables that learning by doing, those simulations, goal-based learning, real world problems, and productivity tools, things that they can take with them once that class is ended. And make sure to use media. You don't want to have a scroll of death where it's just one, and that's what we call it in technology, the scroll of death, where it's just one long running stream of text that just keep going and going and going and going. That feels really overwhelming to students. And even if that text is all different activities, if it's all on one long page, it makes the students feel like they're never going to finish. So you want to chunk out the segments. And so if you're segmenting your courses, make sure you're putting in different types of media, images, graphics, videos, podcasts, audio recordings. Record yourself. You can record yourself on Zoom talking to your students in little mini lectures. So if there's an area you feel like they might have a hard time with this activity, or I haven't taught them how to use this tool yet, create a quick little tutorial and send that to your students. And here are the things you want to check off and make sure that you're doing in terms of equity of access. Make sure that whatever you're using is available in more than one app store. If it's only available in the Apple App Store, then a lot of your students won't be able to access it. And if it's only available in, say, the Google App Store, then some of your other students can access it. So make sure that if you're doing it, or Microsoft, if we're talking about Microsoft or Apple or whatever, make sure it's not only available to one platform type. Make sure any explanations you provide or things that you tell them to do or products you tell them to use work with more than one operating system. You might be thinking, my students are low income, they can't afford a Mac. We don't know if someone donated one to them. So make sure that, you know, or if they do have a job and they can't afford a Mac and that's just their computer choice, make sure whatever programs you're using and applications you're using work with more than one operating system. And make sure whatever tips and tricks and tools you're giving them, that if you're doing it for one operating system, you're also mentioning the other, because or at least survey and find out, do any of my students have a Mac, so you can make sure that you're not leaving anyone out. Will whatever it is, will it require them to spend money? My rule of thumb is, if it requires my students to spend money, then I'm not going to recommend it to them, because that creates an equity issue, because everybody may not be able to spare the $3 to go buy it, or the $20, or however much it costs. Another thing to think about is, do they work for English language learners? Like we mentioned earlier, there's a lot of applications that won't work for English language learners because they have to be able to navigate it in their native language sometimes, depending on what level they're at. So when especially if you're teaching ELLs, you want to make sure that you're considering, does the application or program that I'm asking them to use work for English language learners? Also, is it accessible to those who are visually and hearing impaired? And that includes people who are colorblind. The type of color you use can make things literally invisible to students who are colorblind. I ran into this myself when I was in the classroom. I had a student, I posted something on our Weebly platform, which is where they submitted assignments, and I had a student tell me he couldn't read the assignment, and I didn't understand why, and it was the contrast of the pink, bright pink, and the white, that he couldn't see what it was, because all he saw was like blurry reddish color and didn't see any letters. So yeah, just think about those kind of, I think it was actually pale pink and white. But anyway, but just think about, will it work for someone who's colorblind? I know that seems really weird, but color contrast makes a huge difference, and that's not something we always ask. Will it work on a screen reader? Can someone who is blind have it read to them? Is it accessible to someone who can't hear it? So is there something that needs to be, you know, captioned on screen? And then lastly, is it accessible to students in rural areas if that's applicable to you? If you know you serve students in rural areas, how can you assure that they have access to the content? And then try to be creative. If you know they don't have internet access, can you leave a drop-off point for them to come pick up packets and drop packets up to you, so we maintain our social distancing, for example? And then really quick, I do want to share a couple of other resources. Oh, Pedro said I had to, okay, I saw that already. Okay, I guess I didn't miss a comment. Okay. We have the Links resource page. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Links Resource Center. I think most of you are. We mentioned that previously. They do have a COVID-19 support page. If you go to this page, there's a really great Google Doc that was curated by David Rosen. And when you go to that page, it does actually have a long running list of different types of technology and platforms and how to use them. So if you're looking for something and you haven't found a technological tool to meet your need or your students' need, take a look at that list and see if it's there. Additionally, TCAL has some amazing resources for you. They have 2 different pages set up, one for teachers and one for students. So if you want to check their resources and see what's happening there, make sure you save that, share that. And then if you have if you see that students are struggling and they need to know what resources are out there for them, whether it's unemployment or things for their families, you can share this with them so they have access to that. So that is out there for you as well. So I'm going to take a, ooh, sorry, I'm scrolling too fast. Alrighty, so I'm going to just take a quick sec to see if anybody has any questions before I dive into our next really fun part of this day. And I don't see any. Okay, so now we're going to talk about your projects. I know you've all been thinking super hard about that all the time that you've been busy and had everything else going on. So what is a project? We know a project has a set of steps carefully planned and designed. We know that it includes a beginning and an end date. There are established and clear responsibilities. There's a delineated timeline, so we know exactly when specific items are supposed to happen. We have milestones, so we know we've accomplished specific tasks. And there's possibly more than one deliverable. There might be a list of deliverables related to the timelines for each of the steps of the project. So the question that I'm wondering, and something for you to think about, is will you be changing your project to address something in the post related to COVID-19? Like whatever you were thinking about doing before, has that now shifted? And you don't have to answer that right now. This is something we're going to talk about in a moment. But is that something that shifted your project focus because of what's actually happening in real time right now? If you recall at our last, our face-to-face meeting, we initially did not include digital literacy as one of the teacher competencies that we were going to address, just because we didn't have that many people and for lack of time. But I believe it was Amy who asked, could we go ahead and include that because it interested her, and we did. And then Amy from AIR, Amy, not Amy Finley, and I were kind of talking the other day about how ironic that was, that we decided to not include that at first, but then it ended up being a need. So kind of glad Amy Finley asked if we could still do it. So things you want to think about when you're making your plan: is your plan too big within the scope of your leadership and your implementation and your coaching of your staff, of your not your staff, but your colleagues and your team? Is it going to require approval from some kind of a board, from their district? Is it going to require a change to any type of contract or infrastructure? Is it going to require union recognition if you're asking the people within your teaching team to work with you on something? Do you have permission to do that? Can it be conducted in a 6-month time frame? These are things we want to think about in terms of our projects. Then we also want to consider, is it too small? Is it something you can do by yourself or something you should do by yourself? The project should require a team to implement, and you should be helping to lead your team, but you want to really think about, is this something I need to communicate with someone in a different departments, with a different teacher, with IT, especially if you're thinking about things happening right now and doing things virtually? Do I need to communicate with students? Is it going to be measurable? That's the last piece. Is it going to be measurable? You have to have a project that is measurable. If it's not measurable, then you aren't able to identify whether or not it was effective because you can't connect data to it. So we want to definitely make sure that the project itself is measurable. Okay, and so let's move on and talk about well, here's our template. We talked about our template before, you saw that, but I want to talk about our planning due dates before we dive into our breakout rooms. So you need to post your plan to the portal by May 22nd. I know initially we wanted it earlier, but we're being realistic with what your lives look like right now, and you guys are busy and you're dealing with a lot of shifting and moving parts. So we have pushed this back a little bit. So we want you to turn your portal into the portal by May 22nd. And then we're going to post within the portal a slide template that'll include the challenge for your plan, what your plan is, of course, and your evaluation plan. How do you intend to gauge the effectiveness of your plan? And then that's going to be posted by July 7th. And then your final project outcome presentation will be due on November 10th. So the only really date I believe here that changed, I think, Amy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was the date that you have to post it to the portal. I think we had it earlier in the month and we're now at May 22nd. And Amy says, that's right. Thanks, Amy. So now it's time for project sharing and feedback. So I'm going to go over kind of our house ground rules, and then we're going to talk and what we're expecting of you during this breakout. It's going to be really fun. But we do have to be a little, not rigid, but a little, I can't think of the word. Oh, go to the back to the last slide. Yes, of course. Anybody else needs to make a screenshot of that so they have those dates, please go ahead and do so. Use that snipping tool, or I think they actually changed the name of it. What's it called now? I don't remember. Anyway, the snip thingy-mabob. It's not actually called that, but yeah. So did you get it, Jose? Great, okay. Alrighty, so let's talk about what we're going to be doing within the breakout rooms. We're going to be discussing this. We want to kind of be structured. That's the word I was looking for while we're doing this. So we snip and sketch. Thank you, Olga. I could not remember the name of that. So we're going to try to be kind of structured so we don't run out of time within our few minutes that we have in the breakout rooms. So you're going to talk about your 2 project ideas. Address whether or not that's changed since COVID-19, identify what it is, which project idea you're leaning toward, what outcome are you hoping for, what you're worried about, what potential challenge could come with that, and what aspect you would like for feedback from those within your breakout group, okay? And then, so an example of that, so say for example, my idea was to get all teachers using Standards 2.0 in their online lessons, or maybe to get HSC teachers to do more direct, explicit online instruction. But I'm kind of leaning towards Standards 2.0. I'm hoping to see more students transition to work, job training, or career path if more teachers are integrating the workplace materials into their lessons. But I'm worried that teachers will see this as just another hassle, especially considering what's going on right now with COVID-19. So I would really like feedback from the group on how to present this to teachers. So that's kind of the format we want you to use. And then if you get hung up, we'll just ask you, okay, so what do you think about this? We want to keep everybody down to a few minutes so that we can get that feedback piece. That's the really important part. We want to give you a chance to share what your idea is, what you're worried about, so we can get that feedback and have time to collaborate together. So for those of you who are not reporting out in those moments, you're going to be thinking about, is the idea achievable? Is it measurable? How can it be measured? And identifying any suggestions you might have to help them address their concerns and the things that they're worried about, okay? So when you get into your breakout, you're going to have 2 minutes for each person to present their idea. That's 20 minutes total. You'll have 3 minutes for feedback, and then you'll have myself, Amy, and one other person is going to serve as a facilitator from our wonderful T-Call team. And they're going to be in the room to help us keep time, take notes, and report back when we reconvene. And then you're going to have a 5-minute, Olga's been great at this. She's going to give us a 5-minute warning when we're getting close to time so we know when we're running out, okay? Now, before we dive in, your breakout room norms. Everyone participates. Make sure you share your thoughts, but be concise so that everybody has time to share. Please do not take 10 minutes to explain what you're planning to do when we only have 20 minutes in the room. Be courteous to avoid overlapping and sidebar conversation. Raise your hand virtually or just virtually, because we're not doing webcams, to wait to be acknowledged. Silence can be gold, and use your mute button to prevent transmitting background noise when you're not talking. Mute your phone or computer. Ignore the camera ready part because we're not doing that to save bandwidth. Make sure you identify who you are when you start speaking so that we know who's talking. And then prepare for the debrief, and we'll have one spokesperson to do that. So at this point, Olga, you can go ahead and move us into our breakout rooms.
Okay, so when I hit open rooms, you're going to get a message and you need to accept or add yourself to the room, everyone. So ready, go. Don't forget to accept.
Robin didn't get to finish her thought, but that was actually a very good point. That Realia is very helpful. All right, everybody is back. Is everybody back, Olga? I think so.
We're here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like we were all waiting on you, Sudie, in your group. Sorry.
No, I was just thinking, boy, Olga is serious when she tells you to get out of that Zoom room.
I know. She's like, you have 60 seconds or it's
Right.
kicking you out. We needed that.
It's not me, it's Zoom.
Yeah.
Just take the compliment, Olga. Thank you for keeping us on task. I appreciate it. So we're not going to have time for the debrief piece of that, but what I did get from that is that right now is a great time for us to start posing these questions we have into the portal so we can continue these conversations online. So please, if you heard something or you saw somebody say something that is interesting to you, then reach out to them via the portal or just reach out to them directly, okay? Amy, do you want me to go ahead and pass over to you for the last 4 minutes?
You can just advance it, Sudie, and bring us home. I did want to say one thing, Sudie, which is in our group, we talked about that there are some, potential resources and some ideas. Like folks had really good ideas, but they're kind of thinking about, I don't know how to implement it because it's now virtual or remote. So I just want to reiterate what Sudie said, which is we're happy to help you think more about your project ideas, and we would love for you guys to help each other. So if you post it in the portal and you ask your questions, we'll also be able to do more chatting in there.
I agree. So completing your project plan, as you get closer, you're going to need to make sure you start filling in your project plan, identifying what your SMART goal is, thinking about the data you're going to collect for beginning and at the end, forming your project team, because remember, you're not supposed to do this in a vacuum, and think about how you're going to let others know of your results and who you need to let know about your results. We're going to have a virtual meeting on June 1st. So you're going to have more time to talk about your projects during that virtual meeting.
June 2nd.
So, June 2nd, sorry. June 1st is administrators. June 2nd is instructors. So you guys are June 2nd. So you've already seen the project plan template. I'm going to be uploading a sample plan for all of you that is inclusive of every aspect of the plan that we're asking you to fill out. So I actually did one, and I actually did one with COVID-19 in mind, implying that, you know, we're trying to switch to standards 2.0, we're implementing it, and now we're all virtual, and how do we keep this process going? So I'll be uploading that so you have an example to look at, so you kind of see what we're looking for within your plans. Your assignments, remember to post your project plan in the portal by May 22nd. You have a month from today. Before our meeting on June 2nd, review the resources we've shared with you, post a link to something that was useful to you, or comment on it in the portal. So if it's something that was already posted in the portal or that we posted, you can just comment on that and that will count. Or you can post something that, our meeting in June will be virtual, right? We covered that. Or you can post a link to something that you found really neat that you want to share with the rest of the group. So if you found something cool online that was invaluable to you, please post that. Our next virtual training day will again be June 2nd. Your project plans will be due July 7th. Okay, so remember you're uploading your project plan slides. We talked about that earlier. The slide template, I'll be uploading that for you guys in the coming months, not this week. Your project plan is due May 22nd. You're going to be putting slides together, and then you'll be sharing those with us by July 7th, and then you'll receive additional summer assignments over the coming months. We're going to have small group meetings in July. You can email me, I guess, your preferred time. I thought we took that off, so that's okay. You can email me your preferred time that you would like to meet. When we get further down the line, we'll explain more about that. Your slides again in project plan due July 7th. Our next webinar after that won't be till September, but again, our next virtual event is June 2nd. I want to keep saying June 2nd over and over again. Our last training day is hopefully going to be in Austin on November 10th. If it's not, I don't know what we're going to do. We'll find some way to do it, but I'm really hoping I get to see all of you face to face at least by November. And then we'll be sharing the tools that we borrowed or created, and we'll be celebrating together. So I'm really looking forward to doing that, and I hope the Rona does not ruin my plans to celebrate with all of you in November. Does anybody have any questions before we log off? Beth says she's sorry we won't be able to see you face to face in June. We are going to miss you. So what I would like for you to do, we are now at closeout time. I would like for you to share 1 or 2 reflections on today's learning, something you will take with you into or back into your day-to-day life as you are working. And don't forget, as you're thinking about your 2 reflections or 1 reflection, up to you how many you want to post. I'm not going to be strict about it. I want to remind you that I will be posting all of our materials, this presentation, the sample plan, all that stuff will be posted momentarily into, I'm actually going to do as soon as we get off of here, into the portal, so you'll have access to that immediately. So what is a reflection of today's learning? What's something that you will take with you after you get off of this call that you learned today? Thanks, Bunch. Appreciate simple reminders for encouragement online. Yes, just as a brush up. Wonderful, Amy. Romney said technology will advance with or without you. It sure will. Hopefully everyone will evolve with it. Desiree said it's good to see most of us are going through the same issues during COVID. The direction of my project plan seems to be changing, but in a helpful way. Thank you for sharing, Desiree, and that is great. ILEA educators and adult ed are superheroes. You know what? I learned that too today, Amy. Using the buddy simple system for learning tech. Yes, and lots of you using setup guides, checklist, how to reach out to students online. Robin is so right. ILEA Cohort 2 rocks. They do. Great participation and feedback. Creating more technology PD options for instructors and students. Wonderful, Ryan. Thank you all so much for being here. I will see you not on June 1st. Let me fix that because I can't have this. We can't go out on the wrong slide. June 2nd. I will see you June 2nd online. We heart you guys. We appreciate you for being here and for sharing with us what all you're doing and how things are going. Please reach out to us. Even if you just need Amy or I to send you a really funny meme to get you through the week, let us know. Thank you for being wonderful. Thank you for being present. Have a great day. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, T-Call team.
Thank you,
Appreciate you
everybody.
guys.